Suddenly, the young man drew her so close that there was not even a centimeter between them, and then his lips passionately merged with hers in a kiss full of surprise. The girl's mind immediately became chaotic, so she only had time to think about Lin Mu's soft lips. She immediately remembered the main character transferring energy to her in a similar way when he rescued her from the water. So they spent the whole night together until the next morning came, and the sunlight flooded the whole room with its light. Lin Mu woke up first and saw that the girl was still sleeping, so he had time to rest. Even in her sleep, Luo Biyun thought about the guy because her body refused to forget that ardent kiss. Meanwhile, the protagonist himself decided to try and make a great breakfast for her. Eventually, the girl also woke up and was startled when she didn't find Lin Mu beside her. She immediately smelled the pleasant aromas from the kitchen, which whetted her appetite. Lin Mu froze with the tray in his hands when he saw Luo Biyun because he expected her to wake up later. Luo Biyun thanked our hero, who made such an appetizing scrambled egg and vegetables for her. She quickly sat down at the table to eat, but the guy asked her to take her time because tomorrow still had time to get cold. In between, Lin Mu decided to inquire if the girl was going to go to the office today. She, after a quick glass of cool water, confirmed her plans to visit work. The girl explained that she works as a CEO, so she had a large number of important cases. Then the guy promised to walk Lo Biyu into the office because he was just free all day. She was very excited about this opportunity because, due to recent events, it was good to have support in the form of Lin Mu. Our hero added that he could do it as long as the girl herself was willing. After breakfast, he sent the girl to wash up and get ready for work, asking her to let him know when she was ready. Quite soon, they arrived at Hao Yu Company's tower, which looked quite grandiose. Lo Biyun offered our hero to stay in the office for a while, to which he agreed without any problems. Employees bowed their heads respectfully as the CEO walked through the hallways, and their gazes expressed genuine respect. Meanwhile, the girl herself introduced Lin Mu in front of her administrator and informed him that he could now visit Hao Yu Tower at any time. Of course, the subordinate didn't object, so she had no problem considering Luo Biyun's clarification. After that, the girl and Lin Mu went to the glass elevator because she couldn't wait to show off her office. In just a few seconds, they were on the top floor of the tower, and the director announced that they had arrived at the site. The system immediately informed me that I needed to scan my retina to gain access to the office. The device immediately recognized Mrs. Luo Biyun's eye, so it immediately granted access to her office. In the end, the protagonist agreed that the office looked just fine. The girl also added that the view of the city from here was just perfect, so she occasionally looks out the window to take a break from work. It turned out that all this time, there was a sniper sitting somewhere nearby who instantly aimed at the target, which was the CEO. Now all the mercenary has to do is wait for the order to be confirmed in order to complete the mission. The very next moment, he was ordered to eliminate the target immediately. So he reached out his finger little by little to pull the trigger. A gunshot sounded and a bullet flew out from the muzzle of the rifle, which was to take the life of Luo Biyun, who was unaware of another attempt to kill her. The protagonist still managed to sense the danger, so he instantly rushed to save the girl. He shouting tried to warn her about the sniper. Luo Biyun still continued to stand still as well, not realizing what was going on. Lin Mu had to pile his whole body on top of the girl to pull her to the ground and prevent the sniper from hitting the target. The guy then grabbed her arm and quickly led her away from the window, preventing the mercenary from taking aim a second time. Hiding behind the desk, the girl had already realized that an assassin was working against them, and our hero explained that the enemy was sitting on the building opposite the tower. Lin Mu saw that the mercenary was using 50th caliber bullets that could pierce through even bulletproof glass. He emphasized that it was too dangerous in the office right now, so he asked the girl to hurry up and call security to take care of it. The young man also asked that people be sent to a neighboring building to check for suspicious individuals there. After listening to all of the main character's instructions, Luo Biyun quickly took out her phone to relay those orders. The guy guessed that the assassin most likely left immediately after the failed mission, so he could only hope that Biyun's guards were able to catch him. Eventually, he decided to deal with it on his own, so he asked the girl to hide here and not go anywhere. The young man was sure that nothing would happen to him because he wasn't the mercenary's primary target. He decided to go down to the bottom floor by himself because the elevator was too slow. The protagonist flew downward with all his might to be sure to catch the killer in time. Still, he had to speed up even more because there was no way a sniper could escape. It wasn't long before Lin Mu found the building from which Luo Biyun had been shot from. The young man was able to calculate the trajectory, so he was almost certain that the killer was right there. Lin Mu stopped abruptly because he realized that it would be easier to use the fire escape to climb up. It would also help him not get caught by the others, so the mercenary would definitely not have time to escape from here. Eventually, he met some man in glasses and a suit who looked rather suspicious. Turns out, it was indeed a killer who didn't expect to be found so quickly. The mercenary didn't wait and quickly pulled out a gun, pointing it at Lin Mu and firing a shot. After a second, the protagonist seemed to vaporize, so the killer was a bit confused. The next moment, something unknown shot through the leg of a man who had not expected such a sudden attack. The assassin shuddered and a heartbreaking scream escaped his throat, as pain, as sharp as a red-hot blade, pierced his leg. Meanwhile, Lin Mu was behind the mercenary's back and turned him off with one precise strike. The guy immediately saw that the sniper hadn't brought his sniper weapon with him. He quickly went to the roof of the building because it was obvious the gear was left here. Our hero confirmed his hunch, because there was a Barrett M82A1 sniper rifle standing there. Lin Mu immediately called his friend to inform her of the killer's capture and ask her to send her men. It wasn't long before the guy was already back in the office, which was already filled with security after such a serious incident. Luo Biyun had already released her subordinates and informed them that Lin Mu would now be here for her safety. The bodyguards still felt it wasn't a good idea to trust strangers so easily after everything that had been going on lately. The girl was very angry because they were treating Lin Mu like this, which was not the first time he had saved her life. The guards eventually admitted that they had seriously let their boss down this time. Lin Mu did not stand aside and suddenly appeared in front of the girl as if he had teleported from one place to another. The bodyguards didn't even have time to blink when they already saw the figure of the young man in front of them. It turns out that the main character wanted to protect the bodyguards because he believed that all people can make mistakes. Everyone was shocked that Lin Mu was so fast and appeared in front of Miss before they noticed. The girl irritably asked what her delinquent subordinates were waiting for and ordered them to go check on the assassin immediately. The bodyguards immediately came to their senses and quickly accepted their superior's orders. They bowed their heads synchronously to Mr. Lin, their voices merging in a respectful statement, placing the young mistress under his responsibility as a jewel requiring special treatment. The protagonist understood everything perfectly and also allowed the guards to go back to their regular jobs. When Lin Mu and Luo Biyun were alone, the girl thanked him again for saving her life. The guy asked her not to worry about all that because the assassin was no match for him in close combat. He examined the bullet point and noted that a sniper would have no trouble aiming through the 3 panoramic full-length windows. The CEO explained that this design takes aesthetics, light, and more into account, though they took measures against such occurrences during development by putting in bulletproof glass windows. In fact, the protagonist was puzzled by what happened because even bullets of 50 caliber cannot penetrate 2 layers of bulletproof glass. After taking a closer look at the hit spot, Lin Mu finally saw that there was something strange about it. The girl came closer because she was also curious about the details, and Lin Mu explained that the edges of the hole were too smooth, which was different from the normal action of a bullet. Luo Biyun also noticed that the edges looked like they had been burned through using high temperatures. The main character couldn't understand how this could happen, because it takes really intense heat to break through bulletproof glass. At that time, the girl said that there were such superpowers, and wanted to know Lin Mu's thoughts on the situation. The young man pretended not to know what she was talking about, and asked if she meant the very superhero movies. In reality, Luo Biyun believed that there were people in the world who could utilize such superpowers. She knew that most people are born with these skills, and when their powers are awakened, they gain incredible power. The protagonist noticed that the girl was talking about all this too confidently, as if she had met people like this. Turns out she'd seen something similar in Europe, where such craftsmen call themselves mutants. Lin Mu remarked that it all sounded quite interesting and asked if such people existed in Huaxia. The girl wasn't sure about it, but legends say that there are cultivators here who use qi to gain strength. In the end, Lin Mu made sure that this bullet hole was made by an assassin with superpowers. After learning such a serious fact, Luo Biyun decided that she should tell her father about this interesting street. The events are transferred to the police department of the East Sea City, where no one has yet suspected a serious incident. The chief of police was sitting in his office, humming something cheerful, until the sharp ringing of the office phone interrupted this carefree moment. The man was very unhappy that someone dared to call him at such a time. Commissioner Shen immediately calmed down when he heard the familiar voice of the esteemed Mr. Luo. He was surprised when he heard that something had happened in the village to the west, and immediately agreed to investigate the incident. The policeman thought these guys were fearless if they dared to attack the Luo family in broad daylight. The man began to get angry because the miscreants had definitely decided to throw a challenge to the police with their daring attack. He called his subordinates and informed them that right now they would all meet in the assembly hall. Events once again returned to Haoyu Tower, where so far all was calm. The girl told Lin Mu that she had already informed the police about everything, so they would help the Luo family with the investigation. The protagonist was still worried that the police wouldn't be able to handle the mutants, so he offered to personally handle it. Luo Biyun wasn't against it, but asked the guy to be careful and come back immediately if anything went wrong. Lin Mu didn't want the girl to worry unnecessarily, so he promised to do as she said. Bai Yun herself was in no hurry to let our hero go, so she asked him to stay a little longer. She quickly ran up to her lover and lightly smacked his lips before leaving, and Lin Mu didn't expect the girl to be so passionate. Luo Biyun was embarrassed after such a gesture, and said that she would now look forward to Lin Mu's return. The protagonist traveled to the western zone of East Sea City, where the very same Ye Mu village was located. He saw that it was just an ordinary village, so he didn't fully believe that mutants could be hiding here. The guy saw only children and old people in front of him, which didn't look suspicious at all. Nothing at all caught Lin Mu's eyes, so he continued to look around carefully. Eventually, his gaze settled on one building that stood out among the others. The guy realized that there weren't many people in the village, but for some reason, the diner was still open. The protagonist felt that there was something strange about this noodle shop, so he decided to look inside. He asked the owners if there was any food left, and they kindly invited him to sit down at a vacant table. Lin Mu didn't hesitate long and immediately ordered a bowl of yang chong fried egg. After just a couple of minutes, he had already been brought some cooked noodles that looked very appetizing. Taking a closer look, the young man immediately noticed that the noodles were actually poorly cooked. Looks like his hunch was right, and this noodle shop is not open for legitimate business. So we need to find out more about this place. After finishing his portion, the protagonist informed the owner that he had left the money for it on the table. Then the man asked our hero to wait a bit, because he hadn't given him his change yet. The change was a sharp blade that almost flew into Lin Mu a second later. The knife ended up crashing into the table behind the guy's back, who was able to dodge this attack. The man was greatly surprised to see that the youngster had managed to escape after all. The protagonist realized that his hunch was confirmed, so he asked the two who they even were. The woman also didn't stand still and tried to attack Lin Mu from the other side. She tried to slash the young man, but his reaction was perfect, so the knife flew a centimeter away from his body. The owner froze and was confused when she saw that she had missed after all. Lin Mu moved lightning fast behind her back, and his hands sharply pushed her forward. The woman's body was thrown back with such force that she flew several meters before collapsing heavily to the floor. The blow was so hard that she was bleeding profusely, and before she lost consciousness, she only had time to tell her comrade to run away from here. The man began to realize that the main character was too strong, so they simply couldn't stand up to such an opponent. Lin Mu was in no hurry to attack and emphasized that he had just come here for a portion of noodles. But for some reason, the owners decided to attack him. It turns out that the man and woman weren't the only ones hiding in the place, so the owner asked all of his other associates to flee the place. That's when loud footsteps were heard on the second floor of the diner by people who heard that something untoward was going on. The protagonist didn't even realize that there were some other people hiding upstairs. The guy was only distracted for a second, but the owner had already seized the opportunity and tried to escape. All the man could think about was that he needed to hurry up and meet his boss to report the incident at their diner. Of course, Lin Mu was much faster, so he deftly blocked all avenues of retreat. The owner was shocked at this speed and couldn't even guess how the young man had caught up with him so quickly. Meanwhile, the protagonist wasted no time and rushed forward, his fist whistling through the air and smashing into his opponent's jaw with such force that he didn't even have time to raise his hands to defend himself. The man was unable to stay on his feet and simply fell to the floor, so now also posed no danger. Lin Mu realized that by doing so, he had managed to uncover the mutant disguise in this village. Taking a closer look at the body of the defeated owner, our hero noticed that he was wearing an elastic mask. Meanwhile, all the runaways couldn't figure out what to do now because the noodle shop was left unprotected. The boss thought that the SWAT team had already found their trail, so they should get out of this village as soon as possible, so they definitely wouldn't be found. A subordinate reported that he had hidden some cars in a warehouse, so they could use them to escape. They all quickly ran to the hangar from where some overly suspicious sounds were already coming from. A deafening explosion broke the silence, the shockwave picking up the mutant and hurling him away from the door. None of them could figure out what was going on, and feared the SWAT team was already in place. The boss wasn't completely sure yet, so he asked his subordinates to calm down and wait a bit. Turns out it was just the main character who didn't look like a SWAT officer at all. The leader of the mutants thought they were just some brat and ordered his companions to kill him, not realizing what they were getting into. The subordinates instantly began to follow their boss's order and instantly swarmed towards Lin Mu, who was not at all afraid of such competition. A slight smirk appeared on Lin Mu's face because he was amused at the fact that some lowlifes were trying to kill him. He was easily able to dodge the first attack, so the first opponent just flew down. The other warrior immediately reacted to the mishap and rushed to his comrade's aid. The protagonist still remained calm and continued to stand still, waiting for his opponent's next attacks. The guy ended up bouncing high at the last moment, and his opponent was unable to do any damage. Muten definitely didn't expect this turn of events, so he didn't even know what to do in such a situation. In fact, Lin Mu couldn't understand why these people didn't use their abilities against him. Meanwhile, the fighter realized that he needed to attack the protagonist somehow differently, to find any option to strike. He hit the guy on the other side, but apparently the guy was too fast to be hit by such an obvious attack. Lin Mu then decided to address the other mutants who were still standing by. The guy decided to show off his skills and tried to get the others emotional to show their real strengths. The two fighters who had challenged our hero a second ago were now writhing in pain. In just a second, they were already lying helplessly on the floor, begging their boss to save them. Even the leader was beginning to fear Lin Mu because the latter was able to knock out his men today with a move. He began to suspect that the guy might have turned out to be a high-level cultivator. And meanwhile, our hero decided to wonder if the others wanted to attack all together. The young man began to suspect that everyone around him was scared, so he decided to take the initiative and attack first. Little by little, Lin Mu began to concentrate the chi in his hands to further utilize his strongest techniques. The leader trembled with fear because he saw the strong energy of their rival and realized that they couldn't stay here any longer, or else the entire gang would be destroyed. Realizing the risks involved, the man ordered his subordinates to get out of here quickly while he tried to apprehend the enemy. The rest of the gang realized that the situation was too serious, so they did not oppose the decision from their leader. The protagonist only had to laugh off the fact that his opponents had run away from him so quickly. The leader himself also started running away to pull Lin Mu in the other direction away from his comrades. The next moment, a spirit dragon came out of nowhere and pierced through the man. Our hero noted with a smile that he had already managed to catch his opponent, though he hadn't even taken a step out of his seat. After that, the gang boss slowly fell to the ground without strength and let out his last exhale. Meanwhile, the other mutants wouldn't stop running, and one of them knew a loophole through which to escape their enemy. All the bandits didn't realize yet that the protagonist's dragon had already caught up with them and didn't give them any chance to escape. Sensing something amiss, they finally looked up and saw a serious threat above them. Now the mutants realized that their opponent had already caught them, and there was no more chance of escape. The fierce dragons of the protagonist also appeared in front of them, which were not going to spare any opponent. Before the bandits could say anything, Lin Mu's aides attacked them and took away all of their life force. The guy was finally able to exhale in peace because he was finally able to deal with all of his opponents. Suddenly, the protagonist saw that one of the mutants had managed to survive the attack after all, and was still standing on his feet, which was pretty amazing. The remaining gang member, holding on to his heart, asked Lin Mu who he even was. Lin Mu didn't bother to answer the question and thought about the fact that he had seen similar abilities before, so he guessed who this kid was. Meanwhile, the bandit stated that he no longer cared, that the organization had restricted the use of abilities and prepared to continue the fight. The protagonist was still unafraid and suggested his opponent attack first because he wanted to see the mutant's superpowers. His opponent would not miss such an opportunity, so he exhaled and gripped his blade tighter. Lin Mu continued to analyze his strength and noticed that it might be weak, but at the same time, it was very different from using chi. At this moment, the bandit dared after all and was the first to rush to attack, flashing his knife in the air. In fact, Lin Mu hadn't even expected his opponent to be so fast. But at the same time, this guy's movements were too simple, so the protagonist could calculate everything. After his first attack, the gang member began to realize that he still couldn't get his hands on the cultivator. At the same time, Lin Mu continued to calmly dodge all the attacks, because he wanted to better study the ability and realize that the mutant could even use its power through weapons. The guy tried one more time to strike at our hero, but it was literally impossible. At this moment, the young man noticed that his opponent's speed had increased again and wanted to see what the situation was with his strength. He made the decision to block the next attack with his hand to get a feel for how strong the bandit was. At that time, the protagonist only confirmed his speculation that his opponent's strength had also increased. At the same time, the remaining gang member was already rejoicing at the fact that his opponent didn't want to dodge in time. The boy froze for a moment, his eyes lighting up with determination because now was the right chance to finally achieve his goal. The protagonist began to notice that his opponent's speed was no longer increasing, which meant that he had reached his limit. Bandit continued his futile attempts to hit his opponent, but the latter dodged each blow without any problem. Eventually, Lin Mu had had enough of all this, because it was obvious that this kid couldn't get him. So he used his dragon to take his life force as well. The last mutant couldn't understand how this happened because he was sure of his success. Looking at his opponent's body, the young man immediately thought that it was all disappointing. But he finally had some understanding about these people with superpowers. Suddenly he heard nearby commands for the soldiers who had already arrived for the sweep. Lin Mu realized that the special forces had already arrived on the scene and decided to leave the rest to them. Sirens sounded everywhere, and fighters detained everyone in their path, because now everyone in this village was a suspect. A little later, they saw that the whole gang was out, and now they couldn't figure out what had happened here. Commissioner Shen himself also arrived on the scene and immediately thought that someone had leaked their plans. Upon examining the bodies of the perpetrators, the man realized that they were still alive but were lying unconscious for the time being. Then he ordered the SWAT team to tie up all these people and take them to the station for interrogation. Meanwhile, the protagonist returned to Bi Yun after his little mission. The girl was very happy when she saw that Lin Mu had returned safe and sound. She wondered if the young man was okay after the fight with the mutants after all. The guy didn't bother to answer his lover's question and quickly picked her up in his arms, playfully suggesting that she check his condition herself. While the protagonist and Lo Bi Yun were having fun, the SWAT team brought all the detained mutants to the police station. They started questioning the staunchest bandit first and tried to find out who sent him here. Obviously, the guy couldn't reveal all the information about his organization that easily. One of the police officers decided they couldn't waste time on this, so he asked his colleague to bring a negotiator. The bandit immediately thought about the fact that this could be a chance for escape if only one staff member remained here. Meanwhile, the police officer turned to him and advised him to start talking because no one knows if the negotiator will be so kind. The mutant already had plans of his own, so he abruptly broke free of the handcuffs and lunged at the police officer. The officer definitely didn't expect this turn of events, so he couldn't do anything against this guy. The bandit had enough strength to squeeze the policeman's neck with a dead grip and stop his desperate attempts to call for help. Eventually, the life force left the man's eyes and his body collapsed in the mutant's arms. The apprehended intruder only laughed off the fact that the police tried to resist his force. He was confident in his skills, so he thought that Huaxia's police were simply useless against such skills. The guy believed that if the mutants didn't have the strength to protect themselves, they simply wouldn't be able to work for anyone else. He then began reading the cop's parameters, so he could make himself an elastic mask with his face on it and get out of the station with no problem. 2 minutes later, the bandit had completely changed his clothes and completely finished his disguise. Now the path for his escape was completely free, because no one would definitely suspect some sort of switch. At the same time, the protagonist was walking the streets of the city when he received a call from Bi Yun, who wanted to know if he would be having dinner with her tonight. The guy replied that he was a little busy right now, but promised to meet up after he was done with his business. Luo Bi Yun was still looking forward to his return because she wanted him to cook some delicious dish again. It turns out that Lin Mu couldn't come to his beloved for now because he had an important appointment with Mr. Lu. Our hero asked the man why they were looking for him again, and he already thought something serious had happened. Lu Shoyan had already heard that the young man was on close terms with Mrs. Luo, so he had one small request for the guy. In fact, Lin Mu had no idea what kind of favor the old man might have asked for. The mentor explained that he wanted the guy to protect Lo's family, and assumed that the guy just couldn't say no. The protagonist didn't expect Mr. Lu to ask him for something like this at all. Then the man started to tell him that their company was helping the Americans, but Lin Mu himself had already heard about it. He didn't beat around the bush and got straight to the point, saying that Baolan's group had been given a mission to help the Luo family move their assets. Bringing their company back would be good for Huaxia's development, but obviously the Americans won't let that happen so easily. For this reason, Lu Shoyan wanted to immediately send Lin Mu to the Luo family's headquarters in America to make sure Director Luo Huachuan safely returned to Huaxia. Our hero at once began to guess that the matter was so serious that he had to leave at a minute's notice. The mentor confirmed his hunch and informed him that all the documents were already prepared, and the car that would take the young man to the airport would arrive in 5 minutes. The young man hadn't expected things to be so urgent that he wouldn't even have time to warn his friends of his departure. Mr. Lu asked him not to worry about all these details, promising to warn Mrs. Lo and his 3 girlfriends about it. A few hours later, the protagonist has already arrived at New York International Airport. The guy still couldn't believe he'd dragged himself to the United States of America. He was also worried about all his girlfriends yelling at him because he left without any warning. Among the crowd at the airport was the man Mr. Lo had sent to meet our hero. This relieved the tension at least a little, so Lin Mu happily extended his assistant's hand as a sign of familiarity. It turned out that it was Mr. Luo's personal assistant named Wang Qing. He asked the young man to hurry up and get into the car where they could talk quietly. The man thanked the protagonist for agreeing to protect Mr. Lo for his return to the country, but he promised to explain the rest of the details of the case a little later. For his part, Lin Mu immediately promised that he would do his best to successfully protect Mr. Luo. So far, the assistant had only revealed that they were heading to Lo's estate, which was in Midtown Manhattan, so it would take about 30 minutes to get there. Upon arrival at the site, One could immediately appreciate the condition of the family that had such a gorgeous home. The assistant also introduced our hero to the butler who was to escort him to his private room. The old man was respectful of Lin Mu, and after bowing, he invited him to come inside. Meanwhile, the assistant went to the boss to inform him of the new bodyguard's arrival. But the old man still didn't trust an ordinary student who was called in for such a demanding job. Wang Qing admitted that he hadn't checked our hero's background, but based on his first impression, it felt like he wasn't an easy guy. Jiang Chu from Baolin's group understood that this was a personal recommendation from Lu Shuyang, but he still wanted to see how strong this guy was. He offered to give the protagonist a little test as early as tomorrow morning. Wang Qing didn't really appreciate Captain Jiak's idea because he himself didn't even know how to fight, so it questioned the appropriateness of this operation. Jiang Chu asked him not to be such a whiner, because the man had been protecting Mr. Luo for years and was the perfect person to check. The assistant wasn't particularly happy about this news, but he had no other choice. The next morning, they met at the gym when Lin Mu came in for a little morning exercise. Our hero didn't suspect anything yet, so he calmly said hello to Wang Qing. The man didn't give any sign at all and told me that he comes here every morning for a workout. The young man noted the serious scars on his assistant's body and immediately guessed that he was an experienced fighter. Wang Qing didn't see it as anything special, so he thought it was just ordinary scratches. The protagonist decided to talk about how the house was pretty well equipped, so he asked an assistant to give him a little tour. The man didn't mind honoring the boy's request, but he offered to spar first. Lin Mu was surprised at such a suggestion and immediately guessed that Brother Wang wanted to test his abilities. The protagonist did not trifle and immediately showed all his strength with just one precise blow. Wang Qing was a rather weak fighter, so he couldn't stay on his feet and fell to the floor with a clatter. The young man immediately reached out to his opponent and asked if he was okay. Lin Mu apologized to his opponent because he had overreacted a bit. The assistant agreed that Lin Mu was indeed gifted, which was quite impressive. He replied that he was fine and would fully recover after a good rest. Eventually, the protagonist decided to leave the man alone and decided to walk through the mansion himself. Wang Qing slowly rubbed his reddened cheek and thought about the fact that before, he couldn't even believe that the young man would make him with just one punch. At this moment, Jiang Chu walked into the hall and immediately noticed that his subordinate seemed to have already sparred. The assistant said that this young man was very strong, so he couldn't even counterattack. Even the captain hadn't expected the visiting student to be such an experienced fighter, which now inspired confidence. This was also the first time Wang Qing had met such a trained fighter, whose kung fu had transcended the limits of a normal person and reached an indefinable level. Jiang Chu took note of these facts and handed his comrade the ointment for his bruise, apologizing for the inconvenience. Half an hour later, Lin Mu finished checking the entire area of the mansion, which turned out to be quite large. Now the guy realized that it would be hard to defend such a big place if someone attacked him. It turns out that all this time, he had been wanted by the butler, who had already circled the entire area. Looking for Lin Mu, he informed us that our hero had to go to escort Mr. Lo, who would soon be leaving his office. The old man also said that the special costume for the young man was already in his room, so he had already rushed there to change. A few minutes later, Mr. Lo was informed that his entire team and vehicles were prepared for the trip. Captain Jiangchu also confirmed that they could move out, so Mr. Luo had already gone to his car. The man looked around and noticed that his assistant wasn't around, so he asked where Wang Qing had gone. Lin Mu, watching all of this from the side, remembered that this was actually his lover's father. Meanwhile, the subordinates tried to hide the aftermath of the morning sparring and said that Wang Qing just wasn't feeling well. So Tianfeng took over his duties. Luo Huachan didn't pay much attention to this, so he informed the others that he was ready to depart. Jiang Chu immediately said that the young man would also ride in the same car as Mr. Luo. After getting into the car, some kind of anxiety immediately came over Lin Mu, as if something bad was about to happen. In the meantime, the driver said that they had received the news of their Hua Xia, and all the necessary documents were already on confirmation, so we would have to wait a few months. The man sternly emphasized that the next 2 months would be critical, causing all agencies to be on high alert. At that moment, all the passengers of the car did not realize that right now a truck was coming at them at full speed. It was simply impossible to dodge this collision, so the truck literally demolished the car in its path. The guards immediately jumped outside and prepared to fight, because it was obvious that the enemies were somewhere nearby. The bandits, armed with assault rifles, also smartly jumped out of the truck and were about to grab their main target. The next moment, the bodyguards collapsed to the ground one by one because they couldn't withstand the barrage of bullets. Luo Huachan's driver was immediately given the information that one of the vehicles had encountered the enemy, so the others should protect the Lord and move away. He at once informed Mr. Lo that danger was coming upon them, and began to turn around to drive to the estate. The deputy asked everyone to hold on tight because a garbage truck was already trying to run over them. The protagonist didn't expect at all that they would be ambushed on their first outing, and now realizes that the situation is worse than he thought. Only now the driver saw that the situation was irreversible, and they were about to collide with the truck, which was very dangerous. The driver immediately hit the brake pedal with all his might and still managed to avoid the accident. A gasoline truck was already waiting for them on the other side, so there were no more ways to retreat. Lin Mu realized that a fight was unavoidable as the bandits surrounded them from all sides. He asked Mr. Lo to get out of the car as quickly as possible because it was too dangerous to stay here. The man obeyed his bodyguard, but the problem was that the belt was intentionally jammed. Luo Huachan started to panic a lot because he was now literally chained to the seat. Our hero remained calm even in such a situation and immediately thought of using his chi to cut the belt. In one crisp motion, he cut the seatbelt, freeing the man. Lin Mu asked him to listen to him carefully because he would be trying to get the Lord out of this otation. He quickly grabbed Mr. Luo and asked Tianfeng to also follow him to have some support. The guy noticed some strange movements overhead, so he immediately ordered everyone to stop and stay away from the car. The bandits had thought out every detail of their plan, so they threw heavy beams on the car to cut off any escape routes. For a while, our heroes were able to stop and regain their breath after all. Luo Huachan was a little disappointed because they had prepared for so long for this trip but were still attacked, and thanked Lin Mu for saving them. The protagonist felt threatened again and quickly managed to react in time, pushing Luo Huachan aside to avoid getting hit by bullets. He grabbed the gentleman's arm and ran forward as fast as he could, dodging every bullet. The man was very confused and still couldn't realize what kind of chaos was going on around him. At the same time, as many as 3 bandits were sitting on the roof of one of the buildings and wouldn't stop firing at their target. At that moment, they noticed that one person from the group had suddenly disappeared. It was Tianfeng, who decided to leave Mr. Luo to the protagonist, while he himself went to deal with those guys on the roof. The guy asked his partner not to worry, and promised to do his best to protect the bodyguard did manage to sneak upstairs unnoticed, so he was able to take his enemies by surprise. Meanwhile, the bandits decided to proceed with Plan B because their target had managed to escape after all. Tianfeng mockingly wondered if it was him they were looking for, and the opponents definitely didn't expect him to appear here. This guy was also a good fighter, so with his bare hands, he was able to disarm the first opponent at this point. The rest of the gang only now saw what the opponent had done to their comrade. Meanwhile, Captain Zhang Chu had already rushed to the spot to help Lin Mu, who was left alone to guard Luo Huachan. He reported that the other faction had already dealt with the enemies at their place, so it was safe to take Mr. Luo and leave this place. Mr. Luo was still worried about the captain, but he asked him to hurry up to get to the manor quickly. No sooner had they emerged from their little hiding place than the young man saw that the bandits had already discovered them. The opponents brought a whole machine gun to shoot the silver sedan, behind which our heroes were hiding all this time. Even the calm Lin Mu calmed down when he saw the heavy artillery that could cause them a lot of problems. After analyzing the situation, Zhang Chu ordered our hero and Mr. Luo to quickly leave this place, while he diverted the enemies to himself. Meanwhile, the bandits had already given the command to open fire on their target. After that, machine gun bursts were heard that did not stop for a second, echoing between the walls of the houses. Zhang Chu understood that the firepower could be deadly, but at the same time, the speed of the bullets wasn't that fast. He realized that he needed to run even faster to win for himself the opportunity to knock out all the enemies. Meanwhile, the protagonist began to carry out his part of the plan and tried again to get Mr. Lo to safety. Lin Mu had managed to notice that the captain had some incredible speed, so he now understood that this person was also not to be underestimated. Zhang Chu was indeed easily able to dodge all the bullets in his direction, even though there were simply an incurable amount of them flying. Finally, he ran behind one of the cars where the bandits were now aiming. They quickly pointed their machine guns in the right direction and started piercing the car with bullets. The criminals also managed to get into the fuel tank, which was quite dangerous. Eventually, there was a massive explosion that scattered the rest of the cars as well. The bandits began to rejoice because they were confident that they were able to eliminate Zhang Chu, who was hiding behind those cars. Their leader noted that it was too early to rejoice because their main target needed to be captured. Turns out, it wasn't that simple, because the captain was still alive and was even able to run to the enemy's truck to disarm them. No one had time to react to Zhang Chu's sudden appearance, so the first bandit quickly flew away from his precise strike. The enemy slumped to the floor without strength, and his comrades still couldn't understand how this could have happened. They thought it was simply impossible because they were certain that they had just recently slaughtered their opponent. Zhang Chu only laughed at the fact that some simple guys had tried to kill him with such a simple method. The captain didn't mince words and decided to demonstrate everything he was capable of. He moved so fast that his enemies didn't even have time to react. So now, one by one, they were flying away from his blows. The gang leader watched the scuffle from the sidelines and was not at all pleased with this development. It had only been a couple minutes, and his men had already lost this battle to Luo's subordinates. The man then decided to go to Plan B, which required him to call one person. He realized that the Luo family's guards were too strong, so only a group of mutants could help them in such a situation. The next day, Lin Mu was resting quietly after this whole special operation while someone was watching him from far away. This strange guy was gathering his strength to approach the protagonist with some kind of proposal. The guy himself was nonchalantly lying on the lawn and enjoying a sunny New York afternoon. The stranger finally approached Lin Mu and introduced himself as Liu Yuan, explaining that he was just looking for him. The protagonist paid no attention to him and only wondered what had happened. The young man had already heard that the gentleman was a kung fu master, so he wanted to ask if he could teach him a couple of defense techniques. Lin Mu couldn't understand how the boy could know about it, and he admitted that he was told about it by his uncle, who was able to return home unharmed thanks to his guard. Liu Yuan bowed low to the protagonist and asked to be taken as his disciple. The guy was confused, his face expressing obvious bewilderment, as he had not expected to hear such a proposal in his address. The young man kept begging our hero to help him, but suddenly someone else interrupted their conversation. Zhang Chu and the already rested assistant came over and reminded them that only a couple days ago, the little rascal had asked Wang Qing to be his teacher. The kid asked not to be mad at him because he just wanted someone else to teach him kung fu. The man himself was not offended that Liu Yuan was looking for a new mentor, because he himself had already taken lessons from the protagonist. After that, Zhang Chu decided to talk about yesterday's attack, during which Lin Mu had shown a high level of responsiveness and thanked the guy for his work. Our hero also showed his gratitude for the compliments in his direction, but also mentioned that it was only because of brother Tian and Wang that they were able to leave that place with Mr. Luo. The captain asked him not to be modest, because although he hadn't seen Lin Mu in action, he knew for sure that he was an extraordinary guy. Some other man joined their conversation, who was surprised that Jiang Chu was giving out compliments to the little brat. The assistant and captain had not at all expected that the department would send Brother Dean as reinforcements, but they were glad to have such a meeting. The guard from Bao Lun's group realized that the Luo family was in serious danger, so they made the decision to send him here. Wang Qing was now certain that Mr. Luo should definitely return to the country safely, because Jiang Chu and Ding Han were the strongest two people in the organization. In turn, the captain was calm, because with his old buddy now no more worries. Ding Han noted that his buddy was rejoicing too soon, because new information had been relayed from above that the Americans had decided to use a group of mutants. After this information, everyone gathered for an emergency meeting in the main building of Luo Manor. Everyone was well aware that yesterday's attack was a warning from the Americans, so for the time being it was better to abandon plans to return to the country. The woman was of the same opinion because the corporation had only achieved such success because 3 generations had worked hard, so they could hurry up and move the business to Huaxia. Luo Huachan emphasized that he was only doing this for the future of Haoyu Corporation, and if they stayed here, the business that the family had built over so many years would be swallowed up behind the local corporations. In any case, the owner felt they should return to their native country to escape control from the Americans over the development of their business. His assistants still thought that the Americans' offer was very attractive, and they could get money anywhere. But just because they were moving the business back to Huaxia, the whole family was in danger from it. Plus, they were walking on the thin ice now, so the Americans had already engaged the shadow corporations. The rest of us thought they were doing everything right, because they were coming back for business reasons since the government doesn't want to get involved. In the end, Luo Huachan ordered everyone to calm down, because the plans to return had already been made, and no one would change them. The man also said that all those who return to Huaxia are guaranteed to retain their status in the Luo family, while those who stay behind will either sell their shareholding at double the market price or separate their business from the corporation. A lot of people weren't happy with this decision because now he was making the decision for the entire Luo family, which seemed pretty unfair. At this moment, Luo Huachan, Luo's son, walked in, who had just brought some needed information for his father. The man thanked Chi Feng for his work and now came to the main topic of conversation. Turns out he's collected all the information about the grifts his employees have committed over the years, so they can just take the money and walk away to stay out of jail. Everyone got a folder with information on all their crimes, so it made them confused and finally calmed down. None of the co-owners could understand how this was even possible, and now realized that they were definitely in no position to object. Now they were disappointed even in each other because the other brother had dared to leak all the investment plans to the government. The man found no normal explanation and simply said he had no choice at that moment. It also turned out that they lost the bid for the high-speed rail project last year precisely because of the second brother. Everyone present froze in mute shock, unable to believe that he could so despicably betray their company, which had always trusted him. The other brother jumped up from his seat and started yelling about how they had no right to accuse him because they each had some shady dealings behind their backs. The woman, after seeing all this information, decided that she would sell her shares, so her lawyers will send the contract tomorrow. Her coworkers didn't understand why she would do this, because you could continue to expand the business in New York. The sister explained that as a woman, she couldn't handle that much responsibility, so she would just use the money and move to Australia. Another brother stated that he did not want to return to Huaxia because he believed that his homes were here. Only one Luo Huachan's assistant agreed to return with him, because he always stood by the boss's side. Lord Luo had had enough of this, so he thanked the fourth brother for his loyalty. When everyone had dispersed, the father turned to his son and explained that right now, the Low family split was happening right before their eyes. The man didn't know if he was doing the right thing or not, but either way, he couldn't stand by and watch the hard work of generations of family being flushed down the toilet. Qifeng asked his father not to be upset about it, because returning to Huaxia was the best choice possible. By the time the family had finished discussing everything, deep night had already fallen outside the window. Lin Mu had already reported the information that the security personnel were able to find out after checking out the attackers, who turned out to be from the New York Mafia. Wang Qing also gave the guy his car keys and bank card, which he could use for personal use. The assistant explained that their target was now the mob leader, but since our hero was new in town, they could only let him gather some information. The guy asked not to worry about him, because he was going to act on the situation. After getting into his new car, Lin Mu quickly drove out of the parking lot and went on his first mission. Next to it on the seat was all the information on New York mob leader Higgins. The guy noticed that his target was just celebrating his 45th birthday today, which sounded pretty interesting. To start, he decided to pull into a nearly empty parking lot near an establishment. The protagonist has already now decided to use the card and withdraw some cash from there. He withdrew a couple $1,000s for himself, assuming that should be enough for all expenses. After that, Lin Mu went to the Red Lantern District, where the not-so-great members of society were gathered. Here were girls who immediately started pestering our hero and offering to spend this night together. The young man long considered all the beauties around, but decided to choose for himself the most attractive and charismatic. She spoke first, so the protagonist agreed without too much thought. Lin Mu handed her a thick wad of $100 bills, which was quite a generous payment. He immediately asked if his new companion knew where the coolest nightclub was. The girl had no problem agreeing to take the guy to this bar, and promised that it would be the best night of his life. She called our hero cute and was happy that he had brought her to such a lovely place, offering to order some drinks to lift her spirits. The guy didn't react to all her flirtations, because his main mission was to track down the head of the mafia. He kept looking around and couldn't figure out where the leader of the gang could be. Then, behind the glass of the bar, Lin Mu saw some sort of establishment that was guarded by a large number of people, and asked the girl what was there. Relenting to his curiosity, the beauty revealed the secret and explained that it was a Manhattan mafia club. She also added that the entire entertainment business in this county belongs to this particular group. Lin Mu pretended that he had only seen the mafia in movies and showed interest in this establishment. The girl called the young man very amusing for saying so, and unfortunately replied that she could not escort him into the establishment. The protagonist immediately handed her another wad of money and emphasized that she could have it all if she showed him how to get there. Meanwhile, inside the establishment, they were celebrating the mafia leader's birthday and were unaware of the surveillance. The guy immediately noticed that the place was very cool, and his companion told him that the place was only open to the mafia, so most people couldn't get in here. The girl did not stop only on this hall, so she offered our hero to see an even more amazing place. She took him outside to show off the posh mansion that belonged to mob leader Higgins. Beauty had heard that this luxurious house was made to keep all the bandits' mistresses there, so it was a desirable place for many girls. The young man continued to pretend that he was merely interested in the life of the mobster, and asked what the mob leader could be doing now, to which his friend for the evening replied that he must be spending time with his mistresses. A smile immediately appeared on the face of the protagonist, because he began to realize that his efforts were definitely not wasted, and he was able to extract a considerable amount of information. In the end, the beauty suggested that Lin Mu find a place to rest, so they quickly went to a hotel called the Royal Crown of Manhattan. Impatient, he literally flew into the hotel room with the girl in his arms. In the end, Lin Mu didn't want to take advantage of the girl after all, so he gently knocked her out. He carefully tucked the lady into bed, and before leaving, he thanked her for such a rewarding night for him. Events returned to the luxurious mansion of Higgins, who did not realize that our hero got pretty close to him. The man was indeed sitting with one of his mistresses, who was upset that he hadn't visited her in a long time. The bandit then lost his temper and began to complain that he had wasted so much time planning the ambush. But Luo Hua-chan was still able to get away. The girl asked him not to get angry and reminded him that destroying the Luo family was quite a difficult task that definitely shouldn't be rushed. Higgins said that he had already begun to think out the next plan, which made his mistress nervous because this family was not to be trifled with, and a run-in with them was a very risky move. The mobster believed that luck comes with adversity, and the government agreed to give him the Lowe family's Manhattan real estate once the mission was successful. The beauty next door didn't think it was as easy as it looked, because the Americans made too favorable an offer. The mob leader wasn't worried anyway, because the government had summoned a group of mutants, so they should just team up and get their act together. The girl didn't see the point in taking such a risk anyway, because they were already doing well with the territories after all. The man then explained that being a mafia was not a very forward-thinking decision, and if they got these companies, they could launder money and move into legitimate businesses. His lover thought it was all done just for her, so Higgins kissed her and promised that this time he would make it right. Somehow the main character was already in the mansion and clapped when he saw this performance. Lin Mu was glad that he had arrived just in time to see the touching mafia love story, and fortunately, the trip was not in vain. In fact, the protagonist thought that the mafia leader's posh mansion would be better guarded, but he didn't even have any trouble getting in. Higgins immediately asked who the intruder was, but the guy didn't answer because it wasn't that important. More important was that the mob's plan was definitely not destined to come true. The man didn't wait for Lin Mu to act, and immediately reached for his gun to finish him off. The gang leader was very unhappy that some brat was daring to threaten him. In the next instant, the room was filled with a deafening rumble of gunfire, the bullet whistling out towards Lin Mu. In the end, Higgins could only hit the vase, and the young man was no longer around. The protagonist only laughed off the fact that the mob leader was so ruthless. The bandit couldn't understand how this could have happened because he was sure that he was aiming straight at Lin Mu. The guy explained with a smile that the mobster's accuracy wasn't bad, but he himself was faster. Higgins thought the protagonist was just kidding, and quickly began reloading the gun to definitely finish him off this time. He just couldn't believe there was some person he couldn't shoot. In just a second, Lin Mu was already a step away from his opponent and firmly grabbed his gun. This caused the shot to head for the ceiling, and our hero emphasized that this way the mob leader would definitely not kill him. The man began to panic because he couldn't guess at all what the young man was going to do. Lin Mu didn't mince words and punched him in the stomach with all his might, explaining that he was going to beat him up, which seemed to be an obvious thing. From such an attack, Higgins couldn't stay on his feet and fell to the couch behind him, gasping in pain. He immediately asked his lover to run away from here, and the protagonist was surprised that the mobster was still thinking about his mistress at such and such a moment. The girl's heart clenched with anxiety, for she clearly realized that in this dangerous situation, her man could not cope alone, and he urgently needed help. In the end, she decided to deal with Higgins' enemy on her own, and threw herself at Lin Mu with a knife. The protagonist was disappointed by this turn of events because up to this point, he had no intention of killing his mistress. Suddenly, the girl felt a strange pain in her chest and couldn't understand what had happened to her. The next instant, she fell to the floor without strength, causing Higgins to scream heartbreakingly. Gritting his teeth in pain, the mafia boss struggled to raise his head and, with a hoarse voice, he once again demanded an answer from Lin Mu, unable to understand how an ordinary person could pull off such an incredible deed. The lad immediately remembered the bandit himself saying that luck comes with adversity, and laughed that he certainly wouldn't see his luck. The protagonist informed Higgins that it was time for him to pay for the choices he had made. The man was sure that the gunshots must have been heard by his guards, so his men would soon be here and finish Lin Mu off if he dared to kill the leader. The young man called him too naive because he had already found a way to sneak in here, so getting out of the mansion wouldn't be difficult. He didn't talk pointlessly anymore and concentrated the chi in his finger. Our hero only needed one accurate shot to take the life of one of the main enemies of the Lowe family. The bodyguards only now came running into the room because they heard that something wrong was going on here. The boss and his mistress, who were sitting on the sofa as if nothing had happened, did not react in any way to the guards' treatment, which looked rather suspicious. Eventually, the subordinates saw that Higgins was dead and had a hard time realizing this shocking news. They immediately put Code Red into the plan and ordered all men up, requesting reinforcements to the mansion. For his part, Lin Mu didn't even think that everything would go so smoothly, and he would be able to get rid of such a serious problem without any problems. Only about the group of mutants, the guy still had doubts and suspected that they would not be so easy to kill. At that moment, the protagonist heard that there was some kind of conflict going on somewhere nearby. He immediately noticed someone's arrogant voice that seemed very familiar. It turned out to be Du Xiaoyue, who was accosted by some strange guys. One of them explained that their young master was sincerely inviting the girl to have fun with him, so she might as well just say yes. The lady thanked them for the invitation but declined because she had a bunch of other things to do, after which she needed to get home right away. The guys started to get behind her anyway and offered to personally walk her home. The subordinates were ready to carry out any order of their master, so they immediately agreed to the idea. Du Xiaoyu irritatedly pointed out that she could reach it on her own and tried to break free again. Then the young gentleman laughed off the fact that the girl seemed to have it all wrong, because he wasn't exactly going to send her to her home. The girl asked confusedly what he meant, and began to suspect that she was going to have a hard time getting out of this situation. The guards immediately started talking nonchalantly about how their master's bed was very comfortable to sleep in, and Du Xiaoyue started shouting to the entire street that this was pure kidnapping. Finally, the main character decided to intervene in this conflict, because of which all the bullies were surprised, because they did not expect that someone would dare to go against them. The guy immediately emphasized that he wasn't going to ask nicely unless security right now let this girl go. Du Xiaoyu herself was shocked by Lin Mu's sudden appearance and couldn't understand what he had forgotten in America. The young man only briefly noted that it had been a long time since they had seen his former fiancée. The guards were not going to give up so easily, so they advised our hero to get the hell out of here and mind his own business. The protagonist gave them another chance and repeatedly told them to finally let the girl go. The young master only laughed with Lin Mu, who was acting like a character from a movie, causing the guy's patience to run out. So he decided to forcefully deal with these rascals. The young man had just the right touch to teach the bullies a lesson and save his acquaintance. The bodyguard immediately crouched down in pain and started screaming, unable to resist Lin Mu. The cocky guy didn't expect our hero to deal with his subordinates so easily. Taking advantage of the moment, the young man quickly grabbed Du Xiaoyu's hand and pulled her away from those rude bullies. Still, the young gentleman was not going to let our heroes go so easily and ordered them to stop. He believed that the man who injured his subordinate could not leave the scene so easily. The protagonist gently placed his hand on his shoulder and asked, with a note of menace, if he really thought so. In the end, Lin Mu gave him some advice and told him to fuck off right now, or else the guy would end up in a more deplorable state than his comrade. The noble brave's words had a quick effect on the young lord, so he had no problem escaping the development of the conflict. The guy wasn't at all pleased that he hadn't managed to get Du Xiaoyue, and his henchmen asked what they should do in such a case. Eventually, he ordered his men to teach our hero a lesson, but not to kill him. The guard took out a silenced pistol from his jacket and thought that it would help him defeat Lin Mu, not realizing who he was about to mess with. He took careful aim and decided to take one of his target's legs to start with. The next moment, a rather quiet gunshot sounded, which was hard to notice in the busy street. Obviously, the protagonist was ready for such a development. So in a second, it was as if he vanished into thin air. The guard couldn't understand how the guy was literally able to disappear right before his eyes. After a second, he realized that Lin Mu was right in front of him and had already grabbed his neck in cold blood, so it was already too late to act. The main character got even more pissed off because it's not on video when others attack from the back. The young man emphasized that even in this way it was impossible to injure him. Meanwhile, the bodyguard begged to be let go, but it was already too late because the lousy guys had managed to piss Lin Mu off badly and must now bear the consequences of their actions. From the powerful impact, the bodyguard flew several meters away and crashed into the side of a parked car with a thud. The collision caused an impressive dent in the car door. The young lord thought it was simply impossible because his guards were experienced fighters. The protagonist set a final warning for him and ordered him to stay away from his friends. The young man said that this was the end of the lesson, so he was going to leave with Du Xiaoyue. After that, they got into the car, and Lin Mu asked where the girl was staying to take her to the hotel. She pointed to a map and explained that her neighborhood was 3 streets away. Our hero emphasized that the girl now needs to be more careful when he makes new friends, and Du Xiaoyue thanked him for saving her today. Finally, an acquaintance decided to inquire as to what the guy was doing here in New York. Lin Mu explained that a good friend of his had asked him to help with the trouble here. The girl noted that her ex-fiancé had changed so much, as if he had become a different person. She even had a moment when it seemed that the one standing in front of her was not Lin Mu. Our hero recalled that he almost died once, and after that, he decided to let things go and start living a new life. Du Xiaoyu agreed with his words and sincerely wished him good luck with his new life. The next day at the Lowe family mansion, they had already learned about the big incident in Manhattan the previous night. Zhang Chu still couldn't believe that someone had actually finished off Higgins in his own mansion. The assistant was also shocked when he heard that the mob leader who attacked Mr. Lowe was now dead. Ding Han confirmed that it was all true, even though the Higginma mansion was well guarded. Everyone wanted to know who the killer was, but the captain thought none of that mattered because he had definitely helped them take care of a big problem. The bodyguard then asked Wang Qing where Lin Mu had been last night, and the latter replied that he had sent the guy to test the strength of the mafia in Manhattan. Now, Jiang Chu began to suspect that the main character might have been the one behind the incident. The assistant couldn't understand how this was possible, because even the strongest fighter couldn't kill a mob boss in his own mansion. Ding Han felt that I should argue about it as well, so it was better to ask the guy directly. Meanwhile, the protagonist was once again relaxing on the lawn outside the mansion, and had no idea that his comrades had already uncovered him. The captain had guessed from the beginning that the young man would be found right here, and Lin Mu had already guessed that the news would spread rather quickly. Jiang Chu said that they would like to ask him something, and Lin Mu didn't mind answering all the questions. He asked him directly if our hero had anything to do with Higgins' murder last night. Lin Mu didn't want to reveal the whole truth, so he replied that he had walked around for a bit yesterday, but came back as if he hadn't found anything interesting. Ding Han still asked him not to act on his own, or else it would jeopardize their entire plan. The captain asked his comrade not to be so serious because it wasn't even Lin Mu. The bodyguard emphasized that he was not as good a guy as Jiang Chu, and reminded him that anyone in Baolin's group was obligated to follow instructions. In turn, the protagonist had his own set of rules, so he asked Ding Han not to talk to him that way, because it wouldn't work anyway. Wang Qing also tensed up when the young man started talking to his boss like this, and asked for some respect. Ding Han hadn't even expected the guy to be so arrogant, and began to suspect that he was the one who had killed Higgins. Eventually, the protagonist realized that there was no point in hiding his deeds anymore, because his colleagues suspected everything from the beginning, and confessed that it was he who killed the leader of the mafia. Wang Qing still couldn't believe that the guy was able to pull off such a serious matter. Now Ding Han wanted to see if the young man had the ability to act on his own, since he refused to follow instructions. Lin Mu immediately accepted this challenge, because he too wanted to see the true strength of Bao Lun's group. Jiang Chu intervened in the conflict because everyone could get hurt in this fight, and there would be no people left to protect Mr. Luo. Our hero emphasized that this will be just a little sparring, so nothing serious will happen. The bodyguard also asked his comrade not to worry because he only wanted to teach a little lesson to an overly cocky and overconfident guy. Wang Qing immediately warned the young man that Brother Dean was not easy to defeat, so it was best not to mess with him. Lin Mu asked his assistant not to worry because he was well aware of his limits. The man was even more surprised because now he realized that the protagonist was not fighting him at full strength. The opponents separated in different directions, and Ding Han suggested that the guy should attack first and not disappoint him. Wang Qing didn't know what they should do now because the young man didn't want to listen to all their advice in the slightest. The captain wasn't particularly worried about it because he was sure that Lin Mu wasn't an easy person, and this was a great chance to see his abilities. Eventually, the assistant apprehensively reported that their comrades had already started the fight. Cheng Chu asked Wang Qing to watch very carefully because the bout promises to be interesting. The protagonist tensed up because he saw that his opponent had already started to approach him. Everyone was sure it would be an exciting duel, but meanwhile, the bodyguard and our hero clashed their fists for the first time. Ding Han quickly moved away from his opponent and regrouped to attack further. The man tried to hit Lin Mu again, but he managed to deftly move aside, even though the guard was quite fast. The bodyguard himself didn't expect the young man to be as lightning fast, and didn't keep up with his movements. Jiang Chu watched the fight with admiration because from the beginning, he was confident of the protagonist's impressive skills. Meanwhile, Wang Qing couldn't understand how the friend had sensed the main character's strength level. The captain explained that one should watch Lin Mu's strikes carefully because he relied on the power of qi instead of brute force. From the outside, it may look like a low blow, but it wasn't like that at all. At this moment, the protagonist was finally able to break through Ding Han's defense, who only now realized his mistake. At the last moment, the man managed to put up a block to protect himself from the heavy blow of his opponent. The captain believed that if Lin Mu's opponent wasn't a pro like Ding Han, this punch would have broken all of his opponent's bones. In the end, the man admitted that he had underestimated the strength of the protagonist. The guy smugly emphasized that this was just the beginning, because he still had tricks to surprise the bodyguard. Ding Han became even more angry because of Lin Mu being so cocky, and informed him that he would not hold back now either. The man got back into a fighting stance and swung around to teach the protagonist a lesson. The blow was so sharp that Lin Mu had to try his best to dodge it. This only fueled the protagonist's interest, so he decided to try hard to win this fight. Our hero took a few steps back to better prepare for his next action. He filled his entire body with qi energy to show everyone around him what he was really worth. Jiang Chu couldn't understand what kind of golden aura was flowing out from Lin Mu's body, and his partner was in mute shock. Now even Ding Han was surprised by the young man's training, because such fighters were rare, even in Bao Lun's group.